This is the Mooncast.
See you, space cowboy.
Yeah. Can you do a quick intro, just like a little bit to try and showcase like how long you've been into the crypto space and who you are?
Sure. Okay, well, my name is Jason Fernandes, as you know. My background is really in investments. So, most recently, I was at IBC, International Blockchain Consulting, subsequently NFT Technologies. Post that, I set up AdLunam, which is a Launchpad investment platform. We basically accelerate, incubate a lot of projects in the lead up to their public sale. Sort of got into crypto around 2013, 2012. Around 2013, I started writing about it. So I wrote an article July 2013 in India's largest selling men's magazine called Bitcoin for Dummies. And at the time, Bitcoin was $13, and I bought some just because by virtue of like writing about it, I figured it might as well own some, right? So I bought a couple $100 worth. And pretty much had that for many years, and then it started to take off around 2019. It was like when it started to really the graph of usership had really started blowing up. And so around that time I co-founded a company called AE Token with Gene Hoffman, and when he better job. So Gene is the guy who founded emusic.com back in the 90s, the very first guy to ever sell music on the internet. And now he is over at Chia Networks with Bram Cohen. Bram is the guy who invented BitTorrent.
When you look at the dynamics of Launchpads and you see what's going on right now in the crypto space with airdrops, do you see airdrops as a new form of liquidity bootstrapping and marketing to be able to attract users at a much cheaper cost and with less headache, less friction, less intermediaries in between?
Yeah, so I think airdrops have been around forever, right? The thing that generally tends to happen with airdrops is there are airdrop hunters. In fact, there are literally websites called airdrop hunter, where they'll try to say, okay, you do X, Y, and Z, and here you get some free tokens. And the people who spend their entire lives like following this and doing it to get tokens, not so much to add value to the system, just sort of to figure out how to do that. But the flip side of that is in some cases they help build hype that is necessary for that project. Now, one of the things of when it comes to like AdLunam and kind of the concepts of like engaged short that we do is like that is sort of coming from the perspective that like the 80% of the people that are like building hype of our projects, putting out memes and so on, don't actually really have the funds oftentimes to invest in those projects. So or have very minimum funds. So they are often doing these things like airdrop hunting, which is not really adding value, where they could, for example, build engagement and so on. So that's sort of like what the concept of AdLunam is with our engaged short platform in the first place, is to sort of get people that are building the hype, that are talking about the project, to allow them to get allocation in projects as well. So that's sort of like what the
How do you build the engagement up? How does that work?
Yeah. So we have this thing called engage to earn, right? So the more that we have forums for each project, and the more that you engage on these forums, so that includes, for example, you can earn points for like logging in every day. You can earn points for how many replies that you post, how many replies people reply to you. So it's essentially like, imagine a gamified version of Reddit, right? Actually, it comes down to like, if you think about where the whole Wall Street Bets thing took off, right? Like Wall Street Bets is not the ideal on Reddit is not the ideal investment platform, even though it's behaving as an investment platform, and you really have no idea who these people are. There's guys with really crazy names. And so if you think about what an investment platform, the thing that builds the only data that you'd want to track if you're looking at investment is how the person who's talking, how their investments are doing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the data that's important. So like on our investment plan, like on AdLunam, when you join, you connect your wallet, we essentially figure out which tokens that you have. We'll give you badges for those tokens, so that when you post, you have those badges like next to your name, so people can tell, for example, that you have, a significant amount of Bitcoin, and then your value in terms of what you're saying is immediately, people know when to pay
Increased.
attention.
When the decentralized exchange launched anonymously, like how do you track that? They just put the piece of code up and then they, what are you gonna
Yeah,
do?
well, I mean, I think you track the money, right? You'd be surprised how easy it is to track funds. So I was over at an exchange earlier, and we used a company called CipherTrace. So like they had a presentation, and they showed us in detail how funds are tracked, like from the Mujahideen, like into the Mujahideen's wallet, and then from there to like other people. Like there was a teacher who would like set money from his Binance wallet to some like Islamic terror group or something, and like they found
Oh
that
wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's really easy to track funds.
Yeah.
It's much, in
How do
fact,
they
it's
know
like,
it's an Islamic terrorist group? Do they dox
oh
their
yeah,
public
yeah.
wallet?
Well, no, what happens is as soon as a wallet is as soon as a wallet is identified, it becomes flagged, and then that goes to like other intelligence people. And then what'll happen is what'll end up happening is that wallet will send a bunch of funds to, like, let's say, three different wallets. So very
Yeah.
clearly that like those wallets are probably this. That guy might take some funds off to a centralized exchange.
Yeah.
Now he's KYC'd on that exchange. So now you just
Yeah.
track
Yeah.
back. Like you just follow the money basically.
I want to talk about a little bit about meme coins.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know what your thoughts are on meme coins, and they've become such a big narrative so far during this bull run. And do you think that they're here to stay? And if so, what are your top like meme coins that you
Uh,
that you that
so
you look
okay,
at?
so I'll tell you. I don't think any individually are here to stay. I think the concept is probably here to stay because people are like they'll always go ahead and spend money on things like for fun,
Yeah.
for reasons other than investment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can buy like any number of things for different reasons, right? Like you can buy it because you want to display it to other people that you have it. So by the way, like like if you connect your wallet and you show off your tokens, right? Like so, actually, this is alluding to what we were talking about earlier. So you can have essentially two different types of identity, where you have like it's like V for Vendetta almost, right? Like, or anonymous, if you consider it, right? Like, so that can be your identity. You have like something, you have your own domain, right? Like your Web3 domain, and that is
Yeah.
connected to an NFT, and that's connected to, let's say, all the tokens. So you can choose to display some of your tokens over there, and then
Yeah.
figure it out. But I think with meme coins, I don't think that they have like they're really like it's painful, right? Because as crypto like as people deep in the crypto industry, we're always telling people that oh no, there's real utility in these tokens, and then this like
Yeah.
this makes sense at all, and then these memes come in and it like makes no sense, and but that's what they hear about because that's the thing that gets them clicks, right? So you have like
Yeah.
Elon Musk talking about these really terrible coins, Shiba and stuff. It's funny, the Daily Mail, which is like a UK newspaper, like they got in touch with me asking me if Shiba Inu would ever reach $1. And this is like months ago, and I'm like, yeah, like when pigs fly, like that, like
Yeah.
it's like in order for them to do that, like because the amount of different things that would have to happen for that to happen in anything approaching, real life is just
Yeah.
like never gonna happen. But so I said, look, and they're even worse than Dogecoin because at least Dogecoin is a blockchain. It's its own blockchain.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane, man. But what are your top three narratives like going into this bull run, like before the halving? Like, what would you say is like the number three areas in which a lot of investors are probably gonna place their money at?
So I think things are changing a lot and really
Yeah.
fast. But I see a lot of like I think the Bitcoin, like a Bitcoin scaling solution, Bitcoin
Yes.
sort of these layer twos built
Mm-hmm.
off of Bitcoin. I think that's going to be like a very compelling narrative, particularly because you see like Bitcoin NFTs, and as the price of Bitcoin is like increases, that also means that like the associated costs with everything also increase. So it becomes increasingly important to have scaling solutions around that, which is something that they really
Yeah.
haven't talked about much. So I think that's going to grow if it's not already. I think Bitcoin season that's gonna
Yeah.
that's gonna be a thing. There are a few, like every bull run there's like a new layer one. I think that like Stewie was doing really well. last time. I don't know. I mean, there still might be some profits left in Sui. I think there'll be
Yeah.
another another layer one that sort of gets a
Yeah.
lot of interest, and then you'll have like your associated launch pads that are launching off of those layer ones that will also get some interest, and then the wallets and stuff. But I think like yeah, that would be one. Those sort of infrastructure plays. Um, then of course the AI thing is like
Yeah.
within. I think you look at the last, the top three projects, the top 10 projects in 2023. Three of them are AI projects. So that's AIPad, no, yeah,
Chain
what-
GPT.
Change GPT, and then there's one other GPT, something or the other.
Yeah. Maybe
Uh,
it's PAL. It's PAL. PAL
no,
maybe.
no, it's another thing like GPT something, but there's like three of
Yeah.
them, which I, by the way,
Yeah.
all three of them are launched, were launched by WePad, which is
Okay.
the launchpad out of Dubai. Yeah.
If you launch it on the chain, well, then anyone it's then accessible to anyone, right? So you
Yeah.
can't really track who and who cannot really use your platform, who's using your platform. It's way too convoluted. I feel like, and I think that's where Uniswap is going to probably argue with the SEC during this lawsuit. Is like, hey, we can't really track who's using a VPN, who's not using a VPN, who's American but outside, and is a resident in another country. Who's so
Right.
there's so much stipulations with that, and it's a little bit too hard to track. And if they even go ahead and try to tackle Uniswap, there's thousands of dexes that are anonymous that people will then just gravitate towards and use if Uniswap goes down. So I just think, and there's more people launching new dexes every other day. So I'm like, I just think it's too convoluted of a problem to solve in that way by just trying to attack industry leaders.
This becoming like at some point technology kind of overtakes regulation, but then
Yes.
you got to look at the spirit of regulation and try to figure out like how to adapt it to like present day, right? I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense really that you want to protect investors. You want to protect people that are putting their money in things, that like you don't want there to be an expectation of profit, and certain situations, right? Like you want to be very, very clear about what's an investment and what's a utility, for example. But how does one do that technologically? I mean, you can't. It's going to be very, very difficult over time to
It's,
literally stop money from moving. I mean, even
dude.
today, mixers are a thing, right? Like you could send
Yeah.
your Bitcoin over to a mixer, get the funds back. But I mean,
Yeah, that's another theory that I had is what if hyper Bitcoinization does then take place, and should Bitcoin then be taxed, or would it be seen as like the euro, like the dollar, like in terms of currency exchange? I mean, it's already seen as recognized as currency in the countries, in a few countries. So when you look at Central
it is
African
that.
Republic and El Salvador,
Yeah, I mean,
so
I don't think. So I'll tell you, I don't think it makes sense for say like I don't think it does Bitcoin any favors to be quote unquote recognized as currency anywhere. I think if it's like it intrinsically has like in and of itself has value, just being able to transfer it from one place to another. The it's almost like if the value of FedEx was generated like from its actual moving of packages, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
so from that perspective, like I think Bitcoin would probably like endure for a while, but there's always like I think there'll be a massive have to be a massive shift before you have like they're not needing a fiat off ramp, or there not being some sort of like place where sort of this Bitcoin world and then the finance world meet. And at that point is where you're going to see a lot of this friction where, you know, this is happening back in India where, a lot of the exchanges were being shut down. A lot of the crypto exchanges, their off-ramps were being taken. Meanwhile, decentralized exchanges, foreign exchanges were running fine. And so the
Yeah.
local exchanges, like, I'm pretty sure some of them probably snitched out some of the other guys because it really seemed like a case of sour grapes almost. Like, oh well, if we can't do it, like why are these guys allowed to do it? Because I mean that's exactly what everybody in India, most of the people that live there, they just said, okay, cool, we'll just move over to a different exchange,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean, so it didn't really solve the problem. But I think like I don't see that there is an easy solution for this. I think it's going to like constantly be a tug of war. I think the only resolution is to try to figure out for them to try to figure out what is the spirit of the law and why does it exist in the first place, and then how do we adapt that to ensure that
Yeah.
investors are protected. So I think one of the things that sexes do, like Launchpads for that matter, like they are that decentralized due diligence layer that tends to give do some amount of due diligence on the projects that they provide their community abilities to invest in. So I think that's
Yeah.
also because what happened like back in 2019, 2020, when there was like dexes galore, there was anybody was launching a token. There was like nothing to stop you from um what's the word, and there's nothing to stop you from just
ICO.
simply throwing it on a DEX. Exactly. Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
did an ICO first, then throw that token on. So the problem was, look, back in 2017, people were doing ICOs, but they couldn't find corresponding centralized exchanges to launch on.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they had to launch in a geographical area in order to cover certain,
Laws
in
and
order to cover
whatnot.
some, yeah. So let's say the utility is in India, they're not going to launch on KuCoin, right? It makes
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So if it's a centralized exchange, it has to be within your jurisdiction. And then there's so many companies launching; they can only launch so much. They're young companies as
Mm.
exchanges. So that became like this massive crunch where essentially you have all these tokens and they can't list because there's not enough sexes that are willing to list them. There's not enough sexes out there. So then somebody came up with, okay, let's do decentralized exchanges. That way anybody can list and anybody can buy. Well, that's
Yeah.
what ended up happening. But then you had all these people losing like all this money because there was nobody actually looking into
Accountability.
tokens. Yeah,
Yeah.
if these tokens had any value. And so then you have Launchpad sort of evolve out of that, saying, okay, look, we'll be the decentralized, due diligence layer,
Mm.
and so then if and then I guess institutional investors are also that provide some degree of due diligence for people. So they say, look, they're launching on this launchpad, which is presumably launched some top projects. They also have backed by these investors that have backed a lot of really good projects. Yeah, probably they're legit. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the best way to do due diligence, but if you're a retail investor, that's probably the easiest thing that you can do to figure it out. You surely don't want to just go on. Like somebody messaged me. I don't want to say the name of the token, but somebody messaged me like out of the blue yesterday. Hey, Jason, check out Mango Man token. I don't know, and I'm just like, this is not how you make investments in crypto, bro. Like it's like some guy there's a mango token and you're like, cool, mangoes are good. Let me buy some tokens. Like
Yeah.
no, like try to figure out who the institutional investors are, what launchpad they're launching on, what
Yeah.
exchange they're launching on. Like this is how you figure these things out.
I mean, but here's the thing, man. It's so wild that you can do none of that and just invest in dog with hat, and then it becomes a $5 billion market cap. Let's say you start a business, you start extracting value with your business. People are exchanging whatever that medium of exchange is for that good or service that you're providing. Other people see that, then they start a similar product. Maybe they rebrand it or whatever, and then another person sees that it's working with that person, and he starts another business. So at some point, there's an increase in supply, and if the money is fixed, well, then that means that the prices become more competitive, and the values actually have to lower, right? Now, because we're in a system where they just steal wealth from us, capitalism actually makes I don't want to say it makes things more expensive, but they through the printing of money, they force the capitalists to have to increase the prices. You know?
Oh yeah, of course,
Yeah.
because that's what printing of money does, right?
Yes, exactly. And this is the issue that's happening. That's why people then think capitalism is bad, but
Yeah.
actually, capitalism solves problems. Capitalism actually is supposed to make life cheaper. You know,
Well, there's also,
and
there's parts of like, I mean, there's parts of capitalism that are like they expect people to be disenfranchised from capitalism. So that's why they built this welfare state, which is sort of the safety net
yes,
that's to pick up like the most egregious people that have missed out, that the victims of capitalism, right? So
yes.
then you have these like these sort of evil like bond villains that will be like begrudge those guys like $5 and then give
Hmm.
like corporation like $50 billion to clean up some oil spill that they did, right?
Yeah.
Like and then they'll do things in the U.S. where they'll be like, oh, now we're going to drug test all these guys on unemployment or homeless or something, and it's like, listen, these are the guys that probably need the drugs the most.
Yeah, I mean, again, when I look at that case study of El Salvador and I see what they're doing with making Bitcoin legal tender, and they buy Bitcoin, they actually have enough now in profits to pay back all of their debts from the IMF, which is crazy.
Oh wow!
So
No shit,
yeah,
really.
from buying Bitcoin, and if this case study, which is working out, currently, if it continues to work out, I do see, the sailors, the Bukelis influencing sort of, hey, maybe we should allocate a couple percent from our treasury into Bitcoin, or a couple percent into our, and
Yeah, I think that would definitely start happening.
yeah, and I do think if El Salvador's use case, if it becomes what I think it's going to become in the next 3, 4 to 5 years, I do see a lot of countries starting to look more into hyper Bitcoinizing and making Bitcoin legal tender like El Salvador did. And I think we'll have a competitive landscape where there will be countries that try to push for CBDC and countries that are totally against it. And I think then you would then have to decide which side of the fence you want to lean to. Yeah, and that's where I think.
Definitely on the Bitcoin side of the fence on that one. I mean, I think CBDCs are a massive, danger to financial privacy.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I think you're right. But I think what will end up happening is you'll start seeing countries and companies allocate a certain amount of their assets to Bitcoin the same way, just to sort of like measure their risk, right? To ensure that they're protected in case of massive currency fluctuations and so on. So I think
yeah,
that'll end up happening, and I think. But will that be like 100%? Will that like replace fiat? Like I don't. I think that's like a long way off. But I think you're going to definitely see like more Michael Saylor examples. Like I think already that's increasing. He did like publicly listed companies, several publicly listed companies own Bitcoin as part of
yeah,
their treasury.
yeah.
So I think you're going to start seeing that a lot for sure.
Do you have any closing thoughts before we go?
Well, I mean, I just think so now as far as Bitcoin is concerned, I think that we're gonna see a little bit of a rough ride for a little bit. Like we're doing good today, but
Yeah,
I don't. I think that's because people haven't quite. It hasn't quite sunk in that they probably won't be a rate cut this one. And if all these things came together, we'd have like a huge halving situation. But I think this is
yeah.
gonna be a little bit more of a whimper than we expected. Unfortunately, we'll see. I hope it's not.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. I appreciate you for coming on, man. Thank you for your
Hey, pleasure
time.
chatting.